For those of you that are here and just now joining us, thank you for being here. This is the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce weekly webinar. Today we're going to hear from Mark Mullet. He did say he's running a minute or so late, so I just thought we'd go ahead and get started, and it looks like he is logging on. But just reminding all of you to please keep your microphones on mute so we have as little background noise as possible. And this is really going to be a very open discussion. So Russell Mallory, my communications guru, is here with us today. Wave at everybody, Russell. There we go. As is our business relations manager, Diana Lum. And there we go, she's waving too. So they're going to keep an eye on the chat room and everything for you. Hands up, you can use that feature if you have a question. And so we'll let Diana and Russell kind of get to all of your questions. If Mark's speaking, feel free to type in a question into the chat so you don't forget it. And we're sure to go back and address it. And
Mark's having trouble getting in. He said trying to get in, screen is being weird. So
okay,
he is trying.
All right, I saw his name.
Yeah.
So
I think
there he is.
Oh, okay.
You're in, Mark.
I don't know what's going on with. Yeah, my computer is doing strange things right now, and I've been on Zoom calls all day, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, okay. You've used your allotment. You need to upgrade to the next level, right?
I guess so. I can see everybody, so whatever is happening, as long as you can hear me, I think it's fine.
Okay, excellent. And we were just kind of going over the rules for today. I was letting everyone know we're going to keep this very casual, allow you to speak, and then we're going to open it up to some Q&A, because I think you probably have already experienced this, and everywhere you go, it's mostly, we have lots of questions, and knowing you don't know all the answers, but just thank you very much for being here and allowing us an opportunity to find out from the city or from the state what's going on today, knowing it might change tomorrow. And then if you don't mind, Mark, I'm going to just brag on you for just a minute here. I'm going to read a little bio to everyone. And just kind of going over again. So today, Mark's going to be talking to us about what we can expect for the state plans for continued support of small businesses, CARES Act funding, not just for businesses, but for the state, the counties, and the cities. Challenges and impacts and solutions to our economy as we begin to reopen and recover. Mark is proud to represent the 5th District, which includes Black Diamond, Maple Valley, Issaquah, North Bend, Carnation, Snoqualmie, parts of Enumclaw, and Renton. And we did share this out. We do have, Mark, we have some other chambers represented with you here today. Mark was first elected to the Senate in 2012. He chairs the Senate Financial Institutions, Economic Development and Trade Committee, and the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee. He's also a member of the Senate Early Learning and K-12 Education Committee and the Senate Ways and Means Committee. He's also part of the team that negotiates the state's capital construction budget. And we'll probably hear about all of those things today. And Mark, did I miss anything?
No, it's all good.
All right, I will let you take it from here then. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, I'll give kind of a brief update, I guess, from my perspective on things, and then mostly just open it up to questions. I think my overall, I've had a fair amount of frustration, I think, I like the initial response we had to COVID in March of saying, we don't know what's coming at us. Let's just kind of stop everything on a dime until we get a better sense of what's going to hit our hospital system and how overwhelmed they're going to be. I feel like the 1st/2nd week of April, we were in a completely different position. And we realized by that point that we had hospital capacity, and the hospitals were telling us we're going to start laying people off because we're sitting empty with no elective surgeries. And then we had a much better sense of things that we had done that other states hadn't done, like pausing construction and other things like that. So I was the Senate rep on this committee to find ways to get people safely back to work. And it was just a long, painful, miserable process. I mean, we were spending weeks arguing about silly things like car washes where you don't get out of your car. And so everything just started getting delayed, I felt like, from that point, which I would roughly kind of call April 10th sort of thing onwards. And so it took us a long time to really get into phase one as we discussed things that other states have never closed down. And then when that started, it was like, okay, now phase two could start May 26th. But I think a lot of the business owners were challenged in the sense there wasn't like a clear guarantee that would happen, so it was hard to plan. That then got bumped to June 1st. And if you look at last week's example, I think this was where I was super frustrated. I think in an ideal system, if the governor's office was going to do what they did last week, they would have had King County applying and Snoqualmie and Pierce applying behind the scenes last week. So on Friday, the announcement could have been, okay, Snoqualmie and Pierce, you're going to phase two on Monday. That means X. King County, you're going to phase 1.5 on Monday, which means Y. Well, every business owner was calling me over the weekend, like, what am I supposed to do? Can my staff start? I ordered food. Is it going to go bad? Like, because I'll tell everyone, I just got the text from King County. They just submitted like 28 minutes ago for phase 1.5. And so now the Department of Health has to approve that application, and all the things we fought for to make sure they went from phase 3 to phase 2, like indoor restaurants and indoor fitness. So I know we heard a lot of business owners in those spaces who were like, we can't wait till the end of June in phase 3 to open. They still don't have their clarity of what, I think King County's cases, they landed a spot, we're under 25 per 100,000 over this 2-week threshold, where if you look at some other places in the country like Minnesota, they're averaging 200 to 250 cases in that same metric. And so relatively speaking, we're in 10 times better spot than other cities. And so I was really disappointed that they created this phase 1.5 for King County. And the earliest my understanding is to get to a real phase 2 is June 19th, which then pushes phase 3 all the way back to after the 4th of July, which obviously is going to start impacting 4th of July plans and events, because that'll limit gathering size, really into the summer clearly now. And so it's been a real challenge. And one of the things, we had a big debate, this isn't public knowledge yet, about whether we're going to do a special session this month. I was advocating for a special session. I think the state has spending increases that are scheduled to start on July 1st that the legislature, I thought, should go into town and prevent those from happening, to get in front of the budget crisis. And once again, this isn't public. This was just decided internally in the last 24 hours is they're going to probably plan on a special session, most likely, I'm guessing, after Labor Day, like in September. And they're going to then ask the governor's office, because the big elephant in the room is the state employees are scheduled to get a 3% pay increase on July 1st. And so the big elephant in the room is, how do we stop that from happening? And I guess the hope is that Inslee will use his powers as the governor and the executive to try to keep that from happening. The legislature won't have to go into town to do it. So now we're kind of on a verbal promise from the governor that he's going to address employee compensation in a way that saves the state money, because that we have to do before July 1st. If we don't do it by the end of this month, those raises kick into effect, and then over a 3-year time period, that's $750 million. So it's real money that we really want to try to get in front of. And so those are kind of the most recent updates I have from my side in terms of, and those will probably all start to become public in the next 24 to 48 hours in terms of what happens with the special session timing and what's happening with the phase 1.5 application. Hopefully the governor's office turns that around fairly quickly for King County. But I mean, I'm worried we're not even gonna have an answer by Friday now, because we thought this application was going to go in on Monday. But hospitals have to attest to their ability to handle an influx of patients. And for some counties, they have one hospital. That's really easy for them to. For King County, we have 28 hospitals. So that took a long time to get all our different hospitals to verify that they felt comfortable moving into this 1.5 phase. And so we did it. It's just everything's kind of dragging, I guess, is my general frustration. But And specifically for the chamber, I want the chamber to know that one of the work groups I'm on has focused on groups who got what I would say screwed over in the initial round of federal funding through the PPP. And if you were a 501c4, which is a lot of the economic development organizations, or a 501c6 like the chambers, you were explicitly by law denied from getting access to this support. And so what's become glaringly obvious to us is we're sitting on the state sitting on federal money that's been pushed out to the state. And we're saying, let's find groups who were explicitly denied access through the original round of federal funding, and let's create a state program with these federal dollars that can try to support these groups. Because if we want our economy to recover, we don't want all our chambers having to lay people off because they got excluded when everyone else had a program. Like I applied for my program through my Ben and Jerry's stores that were forced to close, and I know what a difference it made for me. It seems unfair that all the chambers were prevented from benefiting at a time when they need it more than ever. And so hopefully we'll have a state backup plan to help the chambers throughout, you know, the entire state of Washington, that we can, you know, and that was one of the things we're going to do in special session in June, but since that's been pushed back to September, we're now trying to work with the governor's office. My meetings are with his staff just to do it. You know, they can do it. We just have to say, let's use the money in this capacity. So I'll keep you updated on what happens with that in the next couple.
Okay. And I thank you for that. My understanding at last count, and it's been a week, but there was still over $148 billion of unused PPP. And I don't know that businesses know it's still out there. It's still available. Some businesses don't even want to apply for it though, because of the frustration it's been to those that have received it. So
my advice to businesses, because the Senate at some point is going to pass this. The House obviously passed a bill last week, 417-1, that changed the rules of PPP from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. That changed the rent from 75-25 to 60-40. So my advice to any business owner who didn't like the first set of rules, get your application in right now. Do not wait, because that remaining $148 billion is going to get hoovered up really quickly the second the Senate passes that bill, because there is a wave of businesses who it didn't work for under the original rules, who it clearly will work for. And I think it'll be a real shame if Washington businesses aren't front of the queue to get that remaining pot of money. I chair the banking committee. I know we got a little over $12 billion. You know, so basically we got the amount of PPP that kind of correlates with our state population, to be honest. So we didn't like hit the ball out of the park, but we didn't get screwed over either. And so we kind of finished right around 15th, and I think we're 13th in population. And so we did reasonable. We did really bad in the first round, but in the second round, a lot of our small businesses did get funded, is what it seems like.
All right, good. And I noticed there were already some hands up. So I saw Christy, your hand up was early. Your little wavy hand was up there. Do you have a question?
I was just clapping for Mark for going for the C4 and C6 funding. That's all. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I also know Svetla from Enumclaw Bank is here on the line. And just a shout out to Enumclaw Bank. I hear that they've had a tremendous success rate with pushing getting PPP loans. So Svetla, if you want to turn off mute for just a second and maybe share where you're at. Maybe she had to step away. Let's see. Okay. Because Mark, there she is.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. Hello. Yes, I was kind of debating whether I should put it in the chat or not, but I continue working with clients and non-clients who are looking to apply for PPP, and we continue to be successful. We had big success in the first big wave of applications, and now with the second one. So the process is really easy. If you know anyone who needs assistance with that, send them my way. I'm happy to help. But for Enumclaw particularly, was a pretty smooth process. We helped a lot of local businesses. So we have a lot of positive feedback about that. So everybody had good experience going through the process.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Svetla. Jean Renee Johnson has a question about the PPP, and Mark, your comments about the House and the Senate and where we're at with that. So Jean Renee, are you there?
Yes. I was wondering if, when you were talking about the 24 weeks that have to be approved on the PPP, for those of us who already got the PPP, will the rules change for
It
us?
will change. Yes.
Okay.
It will change in your favor.
Great, because I was sorry I got that, and then now.
Yes, you will not be in any rush to go through your money, which, to be honest, I think it'd been nice if they had done that in the beginning. Because I know at my Ben and Jerry's stores, I felt like I was overstaffing because business is down 50%, but I was staffing at the same levels where I was at before COVID. And I literally had two people kind of standing around looking at each other because I was trying to follow the rules of the program to get through the payroll in 8 weeks. And so it's done now, and I don't begrudge. I'm glad they're changing it. I just wish they had done it sooner so people could have staffed.
Well,
better.
for sole proprietors, it ended up being, we didn't know in the beginning, but I'm just me. And so the rules for the money, the draws, you just can't pay yourself all that you want to pay yourself. You have to depend on what last year's tax return says, and my income doesn't match what I pay myself. So anyway, that's good news. Thank you.
So I have a tag along question with that, and then Teresa has another follow-up question. So as I recall, the first round of PPP, it's getting really close to their 8 weeks, and they're supposed to be starting to file their paperwork. So what if they don't meet the requirements and they are supposed to be filing next week or the following week?
Just wait. I would tell them to wait, is my opinion. I mean, when I talk to the Department of Financial Institutions in Washington, I think the Senate's going to do something. I mean, their program was 16 instead of 24 weeks. Either way, it's going to be an extension. And either way, I think the 75-25 split's going to get adjusted down to something more favorable for folks. And so I would definitely not be in a rush to try to file anything. And I think a lot of our payroll forms are done quarterly. So to be honest, I think people are going to have to wait for the second quarter, whatever that 941 form or whatever it was called that you submitted, I think, to verify your payroll. Originally, I think you're going to want to wait till you have that form anyways. And so I think people should definitely hold off.
Okay. All right. And then Teresa Chang, yes.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for all the updates. So when we go from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, we did get the 8 weeks in the first round, but the calculation is based on just the payroll for the 8 weeks.
Yeah, that won't change. I think it's still 2.5 months of payroll.
So can we apply for more than if it's going to be 24 months? So that's it then?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So
at this point, yeah.
Yeah, because then that's all we can use it for is the 8 weeks. So there's not any money left. So okay, well.
Yeah, I know that's
so much for getting in earlier. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
That brings up a great question, though, Mark. Are there any other programs that you've heard about that will be rolling out to support businesses moving forward?
Yes. And so I think that every city was given $30 per resident. So that varies by city. I think for Issaquah, that amount ended up being a little bit north of $1 million, like 1.1-ish. I think for Snoqualmie, it was 440,000 or whatever. So we did change the state law, basically, because there is a law in the Constitution preventing a gift of public funds, and that has been amended to administer these state COVID dollars. And it's very clear that every local jurisdiction does have the ability to create their own kind of small business grant program if they so choose. And you could give money away directly to businesses from this pot of money, and that's going to be an acceptable use from the feds, and it's going to be acceptable use from the state's AG office. And so that has a lot of potential, I think, Kathy, of another source for business owners And cities are just now, I think Snoqualmie, I was told, is just now trying to get their program up and running this week. So businesses can start applying. I think they're up to $10,000 per business in terms of grants. And I think they were trying to coordinate with some of the other local cities so the applications would be fairly similar, I guess.
Mark,
so it wasn't.
This is Kelly Coughlin. Hey, so we did start it on Monday, and those will be finalized on next Monday, the 8th. And North Bend just started theirs they'll start it first thing in the morning, and that'll end on the 11th. And then other ones followed. They followed exactly how we did it, and it's up to $10,000, and that'll be dispersed by June 15th. We're hoping in Snoqualmie, and then probably June 20th in North Bend.
Yeah, I mean, those programs I think are awesome. So we had some confusion when the money originally rolled out that cities couldn't do that type of program because it was a gift of public funds. So we worked with everybody at the state level to clarify that that wasn't acceptable use of the program. And so I was excited to see those cities go forward. I haven't heard if anyone's on the line that knows, I don't know what Issaquah is planning on doing with their money yet.
Okay, I know that Mary Lou and Wally are both on the line. Sorry, Mary Lou, I just saw you step away. But maybe you and Wally know something more about what Issaquah's plans are or when it will be discussed?
I'm going to let Wally take this one because I was trying to get a drink because I've been in nonstop meetings talking and I've got throat. So Wally, you're on.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. The senator's correct. It's about $1.1 million available. It's available for a whole variety of different things. And the city council will be talking more specifically about this probably on June 15th as to how to spend that money. We have existing expenses that we've already incurred that are also eligible for that money. And so I think the council has to decide how much of that do they want to use for those existing expenses and how much do they want to invest in the community. For example, the $100,000 we used for tenant assistance, which we have already distributed completely, we can get reimbursed through that 1.1 million. So there'll be a policy discussion for the council on June 15th.
So Wally, would you recommend that businesses reach out to you with an email and in support of some sort of program to help?
Well, we're still sorting through that, and I think the question is just how much money. I mean, $10,000 is, I think, a generous amount for a business, but when you multiply it by the number of businesses in Issaquah that would be looking for it, then that's a good share, potentially a good share of that 1.1 million. So I think the council is going to have to weigh a lot of challenges. We're still facing a $10 million budget shortfall in the current year. Some of that could be offset by applying some of that 1.1 million to expenses we've already incurred. So I think it's up to individual business owners to make their own decisions. I have to think that the council will come up with some plan for some program, but the size and scope of it still needs to be determined.
And to put things in perspective is, because I do think there's a good point being brought up, is the cities and the counties, they're all broke. I mean, they've had their revenue streams completely evaporate on them. And if you look at what's come in from the federal level to the state, we've had 12 billion of PPP. We've had another 6 billion of unemployment benefits. I mean, that's $18 billion of money that's flowed into the state of Washington just going back, to March. And that's kind of shocking. So some of these other, and that's what I think we have to keep in mind. The only people right now who have money, and it's because they can print money, is the federal government. Everyone else is broke. And so I think we have to, I think Wally's bringing up a really good point, because I completely would support Issaquah money they use for rental assistance, that 100,000, they should totally take advantage, because that's an allowable use of that 1.1 million. They should use that to pay for that, because they got the money out when it was needed. And now it's nice that there's money that's come in to cover that expense, but I think it's a super allowable use. And I do think it'll be interesting, Kelly, right? Because I know in some public then it's up to $10,000, but my guess is when they see the amount of applications come in, we're going to end up with much smaller on average. I think there's going to be this policy decision. If you want to help a lot of people with $1,000 or $2,000 checks, or do you want to try to pick and then leave a lot of people out. And my guess is a lot of policy folks will err on the side of trying to help as many people as they can, rather than only awarding 10% of the applicants a large amount of money. It'll be interesting.
Can I add to that too? I'm not sure who's chairing. I'm not sure who I should look at.
Yeah.
You are. Okay, Mr. Chair. Kathy, I think that the council is really starting to get a strong understanding of the competing needs that are out there. There has been no federal money that's come to the cities. When I first went and told them we were $7.5 to $10 million, I had some council members say, no way, it's not that big. It's at least $7.5 million, and it's probably 10. So they are starting to come very much to the realization that it's going to be hard for them when they get the money, because they have to look at the services they have to provide, and they have to, you know, how do we work on the human services side of this, and how do we work on the business side of it? They want to do all of it. So I kind of think they're going to have a hard conversation, but they know the business community. I mean, if there were no other needs, they know that the business community desperately needs the money. They're getting pretty savvy in their pandemic financial strategy.
And we definitely need our city services. So, you know, we cannot be without our fire and our police department and the services that we rely on. So it is very much a mutual understanding that it's a little bit of money, and it's got to go a very long way. Mark, that goes back though to the HEROES Act, and I think it's actually Kim Schreier was talking about it the other day. 6886, if I have that right, is what you're talking about. That's moving forward. Is there anything else in that plan besides the extension of the PPP regulations? Is there any other funding? I mean, I've heard of just like individuals, another $2,000 out to every person in America sort of thing. Is there anything in there for businesses?
Well, I highlighted the extension of PPP because it was on a bipartisan vote, 417 to 1, and the Senate's indicated they're going to pass it. Okay. This other bill that the House passed, kind of a second or whatever it would be, fourth giant stimulus bill, seems like it has a much more difficult political path. And that's why I haven't put as much emphasis on that one. So the PPP, I see on chat, the PPP extensions are completely separate from that bill, the HEROES Act bill. And that bill has a ton of money for state and local governments to help them get through this disaster. But it definitely has a very different political path than the PPP extension. So I would not confuse those two. And it's, and I don't know what's going to happen. I think, anyone who says I think they know what's going to happen in that at the federal level, I think is probably not telling the truth, because I think it's just undecided at this point.
All right. Another question has come up. It relates back to the recent protests that we've had going on this past weekend, and we see these large crowds gathering in King County. And I think the question is considering, as you mentioned earlier, Dow Constantine just submitted the 1.5 plan today, and that we potentially could move into phase 2 around June 19th. I think there's a concern. What if all of these recent public assemblies create a spike? Are we looking at that potentially hurting the business community and then not being able to move forward?
And that's keeping me awake at night, I'll tell you that. I just have a lot of anxiety. It's been my Kirkland Ben & Jerry has been closed the last 2 days. I mean, I have a picture of downtown Kirkland that you wouldn't even recognize. Like when we showed up at our store yesterday morning, like the city of Kirkland was like boarded up. It was like nobody out. I mean, it was literally like a scene out of a sci-fi movie. I mean, it was like crazy. And that's after what we've seen is really bizarre last 2 months, but definitely yesterday took the cake in terms of, to me, Kirkland not even looking recognizable. And I mean, it's been I don't know, it's just the last thing we obviously needed. It's just been horrible kind of, I mean, I know Bell Square is finally, I got a notice from Bell Square, just you can go back in the mall today for the first time to kind of assess what your damage was. And so we're going into the mall today to kind of see. I think our store corner security camera was okay, but we could see on the security camera, it's just, I mean, throngs of people walking through the mall with tons of clothes that they had obviously stolen in their hands. I mean, it was a real frightening sight from the security cameras, and it's been yeah, so I don't know when the mall's going to reopen, because they theoretically could have opened in the 1.5 with the smaller shopping limits, and now I think they're just in a whole different, my guess is maybe they'll just shift it back to Monday, but I guess we'll see. So it is a real concern, I think, Kathy, that we'll get a spike through all this, and it's been, I mean, my impression hearing from the Bellevue Police Department, just seems like you have completely separate groups. You have peaceful protesters who are out there, and then you have people who just took advantage of the situation, who are actually extremely well organized, to their credit, I guess, in how to spread the police out and do the maximum amount of theft in a very short amount of time. And so it's been really frustrating that I think it's creating all these additional tensions, obviously, in our country, because I think people are now blaming peaceful protesters for something they weren't responsible for. And then just making it harder. It seems like you're a country back together, unified again. It's been really tough.
Okay. I just think it would be a shame to have small businesses suffer even more if there's a spike that's directly related to a large gathering, because that's not anything that was created by the commercial sector. Again, we're all in favor of peaceful demonstrations, and I was pleased to see, I saw a lot of masks out there. But again, I think we're worried about that spike and being penalized for what's going on right now.
So what is I heard Sammamish is having a protest tomorrow in the middle of the day. Is that what people hear or not? Or I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. Is it Mary Lou, is there any word about Issaquah having a formal protest or not? Sorry, I know you just went away to try to not die from coughing.
I have an email that I'll open up and I'll tell you about Sammamish and Issaquah. Give me a sec.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. And then
it's 3 p.m. tomorrow, someone's saying in the chat.
Right. And then I saw that there's a couple questions. So Russell, I'm going to let you kind of monitor the questions that are coming into chat right now, because I think we're going to need to go back a few.
Okay.
Debbie Birdo had a question.
Yes. Debbie Birdo had a question about special sessions.
Okay.
Yeah, so Debbie, I tried to, it should have been this month. The short answer is it got punted to September. I don't think that's public knowledge yet. I think it will become public knowledge in the next 48 hours. And then the fine line was they did get a verbal assurance from the governor's office that he would have tried to prevent the employee pay increases from just kicking in as planned on July 1st. But that means he has to reopen up the collective bargaining agreements and make some difficult political decisions, you know, so we'll see. I hope that happens, obviously, but you know, we had $450 million of spending over the next 3 years that wasn't vetoed. We did have like 800 million that was vetoed.
Too many things at the same time.
Oh, 1 second. I think Wright's, he's not on mute, but I don't know if he knows that.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Oh, right.
How are you, man?
Uh-oh. Hold on, let me find him and I'll.
Oh, there you go. There you get the advantage of being the person in charge. You can just mute people. That's what happens to you, right? You got muted. So we'll see. I mean, I think that obviously the decision to not do the state employee pay increases is a political decision. In terms of proper governing, it's really your only option, I think, at this point, given the deficit the state's facing, that we would have to not do that pay increase. But we'll see what the final outcome is. So.
Okay. Russell, I think Carrie had a question. Is that who's next?
I don't see a question in chat from Carrie. Did she raise her hand?
Yeah, I do have a question. So as you can imagine, I have a few tenants that can't open until phase 3. And they are fast losing hope right now. They're hanging on by a thread. The PPP program was such a blessing and helped them for a while, but with the lack of certainty that the plan has going forward, The city grant program could be a helpful tool as well, but is there anything we can do to provide a little more certainty for them and to give them hope so that they don't give up the fight?
Well, can you tell me, Carrie, what specific tenants are you talking about?
I can't name them personally, but
What kind of businesses, I mean?
They're typically fitness businesses, sports-related businesses, and kid training businesses.
So this was my frustration is they were in phase 3. We successfully got them moved to phase 2 where they could do smaller groups, 5 or fewer. So like if you were a Pilates studio, and I think there's one somewhere down the neck of the woods that I think my wife goes to, that they could do 5 or smaller, which when I talked to a lot of those indoor fitness folks, they said that would be something meaningful for them. So at least they could reopen on a smaller scale. Where we got screwed over completely by this phase 1.5 was there's 2 things specifically that phase 1.5 didn't allow: indoor fitness and indoor restaurants. And so that's been the real frustration. And I went back to the county, and the county's basically told me it's out of their control. They said the governor's office explicitly said, this is the deal. We'll let you go to 1.5, but you can't have indoor fitness and you can't have indoor restaurants. So now we're just in this horrible spot of those businesses hopefully will be able to reopen in a smaller capacity on June 19th. And hopefully that with the fitness folks gets them a little bit better. But in terms of to just go back to a more regular kind of business, it's phase 3, which is to me looking like the second week of July right now, which is an eternity away. I mean, yeah,
that's crazy. Okay, thank you. And then Andy Hill, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. And for Mark, I appreciate you being here, and it's nice to hear this interchange that we're having here. I guess I can expose myself too, so everybody can see what we're dealing with. I'm one of the rally's tenants here. I run a swim business. I teach kids to swim. I keep them from drowning, and it's and there's a lot of civil unrest right now because of use of power. I think that we're seeing certainly a time never more poignant where we're really questioning leadership's representation of our both our values and our interests to a large degree. And it's creating a sense of unsettlement and people taking law into their own hands and making choices for themselves that are outside of what's being guided here. I think as I looked relative to how my business is affected right now too, I know how to run a swim school. I know how to run a business. Just tell me how to have safe precautionary measures amongst people. Don't tell me I need to have 5 people operating under this regard, very specific to my business when you don't know my business. And I think that's what's really difficult right now from a governing direction right now, is that it just feels like we're back to that time where so-and-so is deciding where the bomb sites are and not leaving it up into the people who actually are in the trenches and know how to run something if they're just given the right guidelines here. Telling people how to have car washes, telling people how to walk down the street as if these are different activities. It just feels like it creates this unsettlement in general that we don't know what's coming next. People are giving us guidelines very unique and specific to our business without any involvement in it. And as a result, it's difficult to know whether you can open effectively. We open with volume. That's what makes it profitable for us to be able to continue to teach kids to swim. We have to be able to have a certain number so we can pay our staff and pay our bills and such. And restricting us to the numbers instead of just giving us health guidelines, it hurts us. It hurts us, and it makes me want to pull up the stakes, because why would I operate in that environment when I have no confidence that things will change in a way that I have control over my business fundamentals?
Well, I'm going to say something that I should probably never say publicly. My wife always says, when you start a sentence like that, you should just not speak any further. I think that the reality is, if you can reopen in this phase that, like you point out, is not really that practical because of limitations. I mean, the reality is, I don't know how they're going to be going around trying to figure out, oh, this person had 8 people instead of 5, or this appointment went 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. Like, there's so many specific things, and it was to the point where I think they gave up on golf, right? They started out with golf, like you only have twosomes. but then people would get to the next hole and all of a sudden they're a foursome again. And I think the governor's office and eventually realized, like, how are you supposed to enforce all these micromanaged rules they're coming up with? And so I think the trade-off I have is I argue with his staff members about how crazy some of these micromanaged ideas are. But then if that delays that business from being able to go forward at all because they're unwilling to even let them open under the smaller policy, then I think I've screwed up. You know what I mean? So I've kind of gotten to this point where I'm trying to just get every business to be able to open in some capacity. And then, like I said, I don't see how they're going to be able to enforce all these things that they're talking about, because it is, and you're really talking about what should hopefully just be, you know, a 3 to 4 week stretch until you get to phase 3 and you're allowed to have some of those restrictions lifted. And I think hopefully, my fear is I just don't want them to take away the ability for your business to open in any capacity because we're arguing with them over this last final detail, if that makes any sense. I'd rather you ask for forgiveness instead of permission if something were to happen.
Yeah, it's a high consequence. It's a high risk with little reward. If I put myself out there and get slapped, you know, there really wasn't a lot of revenue generating opportunity for me to put myself out there. I'm just trying to keep people employed and kids swimming. So it's difficult because I would like to support my leadership. I believe in rule of law. I believe in supporting leaders, but it's hard to have faith when it's not really being used appropriately.
Hey, I share your concerns, and I always feel like we want to support our leaders, but it doesn't mean like we can't let them know when they're screwing up. And I feel like the governor's office has been kind of screwing up the last few weeks and trying, you know, I give them an A on shutting down the economy, and I give them a C- in getting our economy back to work safely. It's kind of how I would grade them. And if they haven't had the same sense of urgency about finding ways for people to get safely back to work that they did about shutting down the economy. And so that's been my ultimate frustration, I guess.
I appreciate you hearing me and acknowledging that. Thank you.
So I saw something on Zoom here. Is there an update from the county that's different? Kelly, is that?
Yeah, I just posted it so they're allowing opening indoor fitness studios for one-on-one activities, which I think, Andy, that might be you. Could you kind of figure that out?
Anything I've seen doesn't allow me to operate profitably. It turns into somewhat of a charity. I'm relying upon handouts. I've got to pull in some PPP, put some debt servicing in place and stuff like that too. It's very difficult for me to imagine running an above water business for the next 3 to 6 months based on those numbers. I need 30 kids coming in and out of that bowling every day.
Yeah. Mark,
hopefully it's a month, but this like we made progress on the restaurants though.
Yes, they did. And then they also the hairstylist, because it was 30 minutes. So
okay, that was never, I clarified, it was never 30 minutes for hair. It was 30 minutes for other personal services. But evidently they got so much pushback from the fact that everyone needs to get their hair colored that they gave up on that for hair.
That's right. So they followed you, and there's a link there that has the letter that actually went in and also the application. So if anybody wants to read it.
Thank you, Kelly. That's great. And then I know Mary Lou Polly, our mayor, had something to share with Mark or a question.
Oh yeah.
Mayor Polly?
Just a comment, actually, Mark. I'm not sure where other cities are, but in Issaquah, when we went through and did all of our cuts, we went back to every bargaining group. And I can't understand how the state wouldn't think to do that. You have to. This is shared pain, and nobody doesn't share in this pain. And so I just want to encourage you to press for that, because we need to. You can't carve groups out.
When I think it's really hard for the state to show up and people to say, oh, we want to create new taxes if they're unwilling to freeze employee compensations. I mean, if you're a King County state employee, you got an 8% pay raise last year. You're scheduled to get another 3% this year. So if you don't get your 3%, you still got 8% last year. So I think it's a reasonable place to freeze it. So
we took for all of our non-union employees down by 5%, and we went in and got that from most of our bargaining agreements, most of our bargaining units. And we asked the senior management to take 7%. We're telling everybody it's probably not coming back next year. We went into the benefit programs. We pulled something out of 3 or 4 different programs. And at some point when we get to a more normal and we need to be competitive, nobody will come and work here if I don't do, you know, keep up with the market. But right now we have to be realistic. And the people in my employ, they're employed and they have benefits and they're bringing a decent paycheck home. And so it's share the pain, and you really have to push hard for that. That was my comment.
So Mary Lou, one comment, when I was on a call with Deanna yesterday with the Snoqualmie Valley mayors, my point to Deanna was, I think the cities have to do a really effective job in the next the sooner the better, 2 to 4 weeks, about explaining the amount of pain and misery they've gone through in their own budgets. Because what I've witnessed is the state goes to balance their budget, and the first thing they go to is the shared revenue with the cities. They take their marijuana money, they take their liquor money, they take their public works trust fund money. And they say, oh, the cities are doing fine. It's like, I think the cities really have to have a really well explained argument to the budget writer folks at Olympia about how many difficult decisions they've had to make.
Oh yeah, I've got numbers and I've got graphics that are heartbreaking. I also just saw a graphic from our food security convenings that we do. It's a dashboard that shows the incredible heartburn that they're going through with increasing numbers for people served, decreasing revenues, decreasing volunteers. It's a fabulous graphic. So I will get my graphic people working really hard. We know we have to play defense really hard, Mark. And already just, you know, $7.5 to $10 million down for a city our size is devastating.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you, Mayor Polly. I think Jen Davis Hayes is on the phone, and she had a comment or a question.
Yes, and so here I'm one of those shared pain employees of the city. I work as the economic development manager, and I'm really glad that our city took those steps in order for us to, again, all share the pain, but also still be able to provide services. I wanted to make a comment, and whether or not with the changes we just learned in the last few minutes about phase 1.5, but please let the chamber and their team know if there are some ways that we, the city and chamber, can support you to do outdoor activities. So whether that means potentially doing some things in a parking lot, closing down a street that's not arterial. We're looking at doing that for Front Street to help support the restaurants, but there may be some outdoor recreation opportunities that maybe in a park or in a street area that we were at least willing to explore. We can't promise, but if you could let the chamber team know if there's some interest, then we can work with you.
So I have a quick question, Jenna. Maybe you could answer it while you're here, or Mary Lou, but I've had some of like the youth baseball groups reach out to me saying that King County's not letting them book the county fields. Can they book fields like Tibbetts Park or not yet?
Not yet, yeah. And my son plays baseball, so we feel it too. Yeah, no, yeah.
I know those youth baseball groups are trying to figure out, like, they feel like, okay, we have outdoor rec with 5 or fewer, but they can't find anyone who's willing to rent them field space to even practice with half their team. And so they kind of feel like they're kind of stuck of how to move forward.
You know, it goes back to the guidance. I don't have guidance on various recreational facilities we have. I was really glad that they pushed through the tennis. I thought that was like really easy to do.
I took my daughters yesterday. We played on the Issaquah tennis courts yesterday.
Yay! But when you get to all the other, we don't know what we're required to do. Therefore, we're creating a liability. And as you know, cities tend to be more cautious and take less risks because we're quite a target for.
So if the state were to clarify that, it would help. That's basically what you're saying. Okay, let me work on that. That's a good, okay, writing a note. Okay. I didn't know if it's a state problem, then I can work on that.
All right. And while you're writing that down, getting back to Jen's comment, and I think Wally had touched on this at some point as well, is there an opportunity for some of these fitness businesses to use park space so that, again, following the limit of 5 outdoors, that they, if they could actually use a grassy field for their program, is that something the city would allow?
Yes. And if there are businesses that are interested, they should give Jen a call and we can start discussions about that.
My answer's a little shorter. Please fill the parks.
Okay.
Fill the
all right.
field. Just do it.
That would be great. And I know it's a little bit challenging, but I know Megan Adams is on the call, and I think if anybody could be creative with a dance routine to get some some people out dancing in a park, would it be you?
We, of course, I work at the studio. I'm a dance teacher and a choreography there, and I run the dance program at Village Theater's advanced training program. I'm here with Rob Hunt, and I will tell you, we are so excited to bring some sort of entertainment outside as soon as it is safe and allowed to do so. So, Carrie, I will reach out to the studio. Rob, I know our brains are turning right now as to what options we can provide to uplift and entertain this community, because Lord knows they need it.
Kathy, can I add on to that? I've already been asked if Village Theater or anyone who is involved in musical arts and dancing would consider, when Front Street was closed, that we could have dance lessons outside, that we can find a way to have people play in the streets while the restaurants are open and have dance lessons or whatever, in whatever way we need to do it. But people are just craving to do some things. So I would encourage you to think about what opportunities exist when there are large areas where the proposal that the Issaquah Recovery Task Force, which is a citizens group, I'm not sure if everybody's aware that we've done that. They're talking about Dogwood to Sunset potentially, and the little side streets on Alder. And we got a lot of space. Fill up that space safely would be great.
Well, the Village Theater, they were part of one of our Senate meetings, committee hearings, that we did a few weeks ago, that trying to find things that were gaps, and Rob pointed out, which I didn't realize, is most nonprofits are self-insured for their unemployment, and there was a huge amount of anxiety from, after he mentioned it, every nonprofit that was on the call was like, yeah, we're all self-insured and we're really nervous that we're going to get this huge explosion in our unemployment rates, because we were forced to lay people off through no fault of our own. And that was one of the places, going back to where the federal money that's coming to the states, that's now moved to the top of the list of one of the things we have to figure out to address, so the nonprofits aren't penalized through their unemployment insurance rates for something they had nothing to do with.
Right, exactly. Debbie Birdo had a question.
And I'm down. I'm chairing a meeting at 2:00, so I'm down to my last 2 minutes. So, go ahead.
Okay. So Debbie, can I ask you to hold, because that's a quick question for the mayor. I'll take this opportunity to thank you, Mark, for joining us today. It's been great to have you be so open and honest with us about what's going on. As a business owner, we rely on you representing all of us when you go and do your other day job, because it's truly important. You feel the pain, you know how real it is, and we ask you to just keep up the good fight. And if there's anything you need from us, letter writing, email campaigns, anything, please keep us informed. We're here for you to do anything that will be beneficial to getting us all reopened and get our economy started again.
Excellent. And Debbie asked me a private question, which I think we could share publicly, because she asked, is the capital budget going to be impacted from all this with a lower capital budget? And the answer is no. I think the capital budget is based on our state's bonding authority. The thought is, when it comes to building things going to be around for the next 30 years, we don't plan on cutting back on any of that. I think we plan to issue the full amount of debt we can and get as many construction projects underway as possible. And I think the same goes for a transportation infrastructure package, which is the main goal for me, obviously, on that, is to finish Highway 18. That's all full steam ahead. The transportation infrastructure package, which would involve a higher gas tax, but I mean, it is what it is. And I think the capital budget, all those things that involve borrowing money to build things are going to be around and help our economy recover. I think we plan to do. I think we have to tighten our strings on the operating budget completely. Otherwise, like Mary Lou says, everyone's going to be broke. The state will run out of money if we don't make some spending decisions on the operating level. But in terms of capital investment, we plan to keep those running full steam ahead and hopefully get as many people to work building stuff that'll benefit our region for decades into the future. But thank you so much, Kathy, and sorry I have to run.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
I think the mayor might still be on the line though.
Yeah, I can stay for a few extra minutes.
Okay, because I know Debbie Birdo had a question for you as well.
Yes. Okay, coming back here. Concerts on the Green has come up quite a bit. I love the flexibility and nimbleness that my Parks and Community Service Director is showing right now. Many cities have come out and just canceled through a certain date, and we are not doing that. We are backtracking to what he calls a decision point date, so that we cannot start the concerts on the Green as we normally would, but if there's ability to do them later in the season, in August or September, and the lead up planning can get done, we'll do it. We want to have as many events and activities as we can have, and maybe some new ones too. So I also wanted to comment on something Mark said about their borrowing capacity, just so that the difference between the city and the state is pretty clear. We do not borrow up to our maximum amount, and the reason is we don't have enough revenues to pay the bills on those loans. So the council was surprised to hear that we could actually borrow more money if we had revenue to pay out on the loans. So we are not in the same position as the state. Now, many of our capital projects get funding from different sources, and so we can cobble something together, but anything that required the city to carry the large debt obligation, we can't get up there. We don't have a revenue stream to pay it. So if you see a project going on in the city, it's very likely that it's heavily state and federally funded, and that's how we got it over the end line. But if it's a smaller project that the city would have to bond for itself completely, those aren't going to move forward, unfortunately.
And that's, thank you for sharing with us the difference, because the obvious leap would be that if the state could do it, so could
we could do it, right? Well, if the feds give me $50 million, I could do a lot of capital projects. So, but we'll see. We're lobbying hard, and I did lobby Congresswoman Schreier last week when we were having a debate about the next funding package and infrastructure. And, you know, her understanding was that the next package is the most important, and then later on comes infrastructure. And every mayor said, nope, want them both. Don't put infrastructure on a back burner. If you give us money, we will construct things. We will put people back to work. It's very, very important to get the infrastructure money. So we'll see where we go.
Okay, great. And thank you again for being out there for us and fighting the good fight. We so appreciate you, Mayor Polly. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here today. I know sometimes you think of questions that after we meet that you think, oh, got it, I forgot about asking this, or you maybe just felt like it was a question you'd like to ask offline. Please feel free to shoot me an email. We'll get it to the appropriate parties and get the answers to you. I want to remind you, as we are now looking like we're entering into phase 1.5 at some point soon, I won't say exactly when, but soon, that we have created the COVID-19 toolkit for you. So if you need signage information, if you need employee policy information, anything you need, you can find it on the city site or on the chamber site. And this is really important that you make sure you go through these steps before you reopen, because one of the things we hear over and over again from our community is the desire to feel safe. They want to get back out, they want to support us, but they need to feel safe. And our employees need to feel safe. And so I just encourage all of you to take that moment to breathe and to make sure you look at those toolkits and you have all your appropriate signage and PPE and policies in place, so that your customers feel welcome, which they always do anyway, but they feel welcome back into a safe environment that they want to go back and share with all their friends. Oh yes, you have to get back out there. They did everything to make me feel comfortable. I wouldn't hesitate in a minute to get back to them. And that's the message from all of us to all of you, is to make sure that as we reopen, we do so with our customers' heart in mind, because that will make the difference moving forward. So thank you again, everyone. Questions, feel free to reach out. We're always here for you, and we'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Thanks very much.